Oh, there's people watching. All right. Get my rim light on. Looks like we're live, so I'll go. It's Monday, May 24th, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we are talking about video cameras. So I did actually, I'm fully vaccinated. Like, I'm way past the 2 weeks after my second shot. So I went back into my office once today.
Wow, I've not gone even like to Manhattan's except for
It was weird.
And to go to the dentist once.
Yep. I mean, so even now, having done this, I can count on one hand the number of buildings I have been inside since the weekend after PAX East last year.
Yep, pretty much, yeah.
This one CVS, this one time on a bike ride. Because I wasn't even going to grocery stores because, delivery.
Oh, right. I went to the grocery store.
Yeah. But still, that counts as one building.
Oh, I went to, actually, there are a few grocery stores. Right?
Oh.
Family market. We got a family market over here.
Yeah, but now it's at the point.
There were some times I got takeout and I went in, got the takeout, and walked out.
I was weirdly able to avoid that for almost the entire quarantine because all the places that did pickup had outdoor pickup places.
It's not a big deal to walk in and grab something off a table and walk out.
Yeah. No, we had this. Both of our households were pretty prudent and also lucky in that we didn't have the free. Because, statistically, a low odds aren't zero odds. So even if you do everything right, you could just get fucked.
Yep.
But we pulled out okay so far. So my observations going to Manhattan is one, there is still like nobody in Manhattan. Like it is just a ghost town. Like there's almost no traffic. There's no one on the street hardly.
When I went to the dentist and when I went for the vaccine, there was less people, right? So the vaccine was 6 to 8 weeks ago when I went, and it's like, Times Square. It's like there were, there was a hot dog vendor and like no one buying hot dogs. I think I saw one blob of tourists, right?
Yep.
Stuff was still closed though, so why would tourists be there, right? It's like the Broadway is like, oh, we're gonna open September. It's way far, it's months away.
Yeah, like what? New York's not an amusement park, even as much as tourists think it is. Like if you just show up here, it doesn't entertain you.
Come to New York on vacation, guys. What are we gonna do? Stay in a hotel, buy a hot dog.
Yep.
What else is open? The gift shop was open. You could buy it. I love New York.
You know what? You can do all the things that are only fun to people who live here.
That's what you can do.
Like, what do I do in New York? Go hang out in our amazing parks. Don't fly here to do that.
The park wasn't open until recently, so that's not the street. That's the park. So I'm sure if you go to the park, there's plenty of people.
Two, pretty much everything is closed, like permanently closed. Like, there's so much empty real estate that it was surprising.
There was before, and now there's more.
It's just so much is empty, and all the places, with one exception, that I have ever eaten lunch at on purpose more than once near my office are gone and replaced with more generic chains. Like all the Maison Kaises are all gone and replaced by the shitty version of Le Pen Quotidien.
Okay.
So there weren't a lot of lunch places. The Katagiri Mart is still open and just fine. Like they're just totally normal. And also at least everything, everyone's still wearing masks except when they're alone outside. Like every store still has their mask signs up. It's still people are still being pretty cautious in New York compared to other places.
Yeah, it seems like, my office, I only know what's going on there because of, Slack messages, right? But it seems like there's more people there than there were. They had a very regimented system. And it seems like very few people were participating in it previously. And now I think that basically I don't know exactly what system they have now, but it feels like based on what I'm seeing is that, it's like people who want to go back there are just sort of back there now,
Yeah, we're at no one wants to go back. I know a few people who wanted to go back to the office full time, and that is not the majority opinion.
Even if I go back there, basically no one on my team of people is there, right? So what am I gaining by going?
Oh, no, I was only there performatively because, I'm a highly visible, pretty senior manager. But seriously, almost all my engineering teams aren't even in the U.S. They're in places where they can't even get the vaccine. Even if there was no COVID, they're all remote. Almost no one I need to talk to is physically in the same building as me.
They do keep sending out messages lately of like all the food that's in the office. Like,
We're getting a lot of that too. They're like, hey, we added
in the New York City channel, it's always like free food on 14, guys. Come on. And it's like, it's sort of like, oh, come back to the office and get free food.
Yeah, you're not
I'm
tricking me. You gave me free food all the time when I was in the office, and I didn't even eat it then. You think I'm going to eat it now?
My thought is, if I do go back there, I'll be sure to only go back on the days when the food is.
Taco Tuesday. My plan is to go back in one day a week, and
Well, isn't that because you're required to?
yeah, well, so it's one of those. I am not officially yet required to. However, as a highly visible person, I am expected to show up semi-regularly, and it's all kind of a statistics game and whatever.
Just don't. Just be like, fuck you.
Yeah, I'll go in one day a week. It was novel enough, but I will say I was way less productive in the office than I would have been at home because you know what my day was? A million meetings with people who are at home using the shittier work computer with the shittier headphones and the shittier webcam.
I don't know if I'm more, or it's like, am I more or less productive in the, maybe in the office, maybe actually more productive because I don't have the good screen next to the bad screen.
Yeah, but at work, it's not.
But
well,
also the thing is, I don't give a shit if I'm productive. Fuck you. Give me more money for less work. I want to do less work, not more work. If I'm more productive, that's a problem.
Yep.
Also, the time, even if I am more productive in the office somehow, and I want to be more productive, what about the time I'm losing going to and from the office, just riding a train?
Well, the thing is, I think the entirety of the tech and even to a broader extent, like capital markets sector, like the technology-enabled stuff in New York, I think there's going to be a huge exodus of people who are asked to come back into the office but moved away and are just going to quit and try to find a job near wherever they moved. Oh, I know a lot of people who are in like California.
Backgrounds on their video chats.
Yep.
Right?
A lot of people moved, and a lot of people also, I know I've run into a lot of people who had the long commute for a long time, like people who, unlike us, just stayed upstate, like that's just their life, doing an hour commute. And they didn't think much of it previously, like they'd resigned themselves to having that long commute. But now they had a year of not doing that commute, and they realized how soul-sucking it is, and they can't go back to it. But they also can't afford to buy a place in the city.
Aren't they? Wait, if they're Bloomberg, shouldn't they be getting paid a fortune?
It depends on what the job is. And also, part of the reason why I feel like I'm being paid a fortune is that I am a dink. I don't have any responsibilities.
Yeah.
Most of the people I know who worry about that kind of thing have multiple kids and possibly own a house.
Well, who told you to do that?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with my. If I work from home, my commute is 45 seconds because I just kind of roll out of bed and go into my first meeting, and then I brush my teeth later.
Whether I commute or even on Saturday, I go to the same chair.
Yeah. But even if I go to the office, it's a 12-minute commute, maybe. But the other thing, I took a city bike there because because you have to get COVID test before you even go into the building. So I didn't want to like deal with having to like stash my bike and go out, and so I just took a city bike. And they only had e-bikes at the city bike station near us. All e-bikes, nothing else.
There's a lot more. Yeah, I had to when I was.
I had to pay $1.30 to use that e-bike.
Oh, you paid? Oh, when I used my.
E-bikes aren't free, even if you have an annual plan.
City bikes, I actually had to walk to a different dock to get a non-e-bike.
Oh, there was literally the dock was completely full, and it was all but one were e-bikes. The non-e-bike was broken.
Yeah, just go to the next dock.
The next dock is like 5 minutes away. I have to walk to it.
Okay, well then pay money.
I paid the $1.30, and the e-bikes are all right. But I did learn something I didn't think about because these are e-bikes that are designed to make people not hurt themselves, and they're designed to like not drive unless you're pedaling. It makes sense.
It's pedal assist. Yeah, it's not.
So what I discovered is I was going down the Queensboro Bridge, and I was like, So it seems to figure out if I'm pedaling, like if I'm pushing against the gearing above a certain threshold is when the power assist kicks in, and it seems to increase if I push harder. So I pedaled as hard as I could on a downhill to see what would happen.
To just crash into the wall and die.
I was able to get pretty fast for a city bike. Like,
You don't say.
I got about 40 miles an hour, which is way slower than I can go on my real bike, but I did not think I would get a city bike up to 40 miles an hour.
You didn't. The motor did.
Y'all, I got it there with the motor's help.
The motor was doing most of the work.
The fastest I've ever gone on a bike was exactly 51 miles an hour. And that was on a mountain bike in the mountains of Tennessee when I was in middle school.
Yeah, okay.
That was a bad idea.
You don't say.
Basically, we were driving. We're on a family trip. We'll get into the news. And we're on the mountains, and we're going to take this exit that goes down a really, really long, like, downhill ramp to this parking lot thing. And my parents were like, hey, you guys want to bike down that? And we're like, fuck yeah. We just got on our bikes and just went down.
Okay.
It was awesome. Anyway, got any tech news?
I do have a tech news. So check this out. Where was it again? There it is.
Freenode.
Oh, they want to do the Freenode one first? Okay, so if people don't know, Freenode is a very old IRC network. And what Freenode is an IRC network specifically for the open source community. So all the major open source projects out there, even I guess until recently, and maybe even still today, if they're not aware of what's going on. Usually, if you start an open source project and you have a community of people who are actually like developers, and you also need maybe to provide support to users because you're like a real project. You're not just something one guy made and slapped on GitHub. You generally will start a Freenode channel, right, on the an IRC channel on the Freenode network. And then people will know that, generally, this is a somewhat major open source project. I need help with it, or I'm getting more involved with it. And they'll know that there's going to be a Freenode channel for it. And they go there and they join the channel, and there's the other developers. And, that's what you used. You didn't have like a Discord for your, open source project. You don't need more than one channel. You just need the one channel, right? What else is there to talk about? It's just the project. That's it, right? So what happened was it's one of those situations that we're seeing, I guess, of this pattern of Freenode is sort of like a foundation. I don't even know what its technical organization is or was, but it's one of those sort of like non-profiting groups. Right? I don't know if it's actually a 401c3 non-profit, but it's a foundation or something like that, some sort of organization that is not for profit. It's just, maybe it has a board or something. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I don't think about IRC much, nor have I for about 15 years.
But it's basically just benevolently administered, right? For the sake of the people and the community, right? It's not trying to make money. It's not trying to do anything. It's just, taking some donations and paying people the bare minimum to keep this thing updated, stable, running, and so forth. Volunteers doing, just whatever you got to do to keep the lights on, this rock of the community of open source software. So what happened recently was this thing I've seen happen before where some sort of profiting organization somehow ends up taking control via means or another, right? I think in this case, I heard some stories like there was a profiting group that was helping with like conferences on the side, but somehow the contract wording and they ended up grabbing more ownership, legally speaking, or some business like that, right?
I skimmed this article and couldn't quite make out exactly what went down without deeper reading that I didn't care to do.
Right, but this has happened a few times. .org was almost taken over by a for-profit entity, but that was stopped, thankfully. But there have been some other incidents. I just can't think of any right now. This definitely isn't the first. Regardless, there's been a lot of hearsay from different people. I saw one person write a story about how, because they were worried about the state of Freenode, they moved. They had like a bot channel, and they moved. They relaunched the bot channel on a different IRC network, and in the Freenode channel, they mentioned that they had moved in the subject line of the IRC channel. And then later on, one of the admins of Freenode who is with the new owners, sort of reset the channel and kick them out and reset the subject, right? But that's just a story. I guess I could have logged into IRC to check and verify, but whatever. But one thing that I saw that basically gave a lot of credence to all of these rumblings that basically Freenode is dead, everyone moved to this other IRC network now. I forget the name of the new IRC network people are moving to, but is on the GitHub for Freenode in like the code of conduct area, right? You can see, I saw it on GitHub. There was basically this, commit that was removing the language in the code of conduct that said like, don't be racist, homophobic, transphobic, et cetera. And that language just got removed. And there was a comment that was like, oh, so it's okay to just say racist shit on Freenode now? It's like, a comment was along those lines. So yeah, whoever took over Freenode, someone took it over somehow. And now all those open source, people are probably going to slowly figure out what's going on and move off of Freenode.
Looks like they're moving to Libera Chat.
Yes, that's the one. Libera Chat is now the new Freenode apparently. So
yep.
Yeah, it had a long life. I don't know what they hope to gain from owning it, like, or messing with it. Like,
well, I don't. This is what I never understand with these kind.
People who are smart enough to run IRC servers aren't going to pay for them when they can run their own, and when Discord exists, and when Slack. And it's like, what were you hoping to do here?
This reeks more of the power play was people who had a weird personal, like, anti-progressive agenda, maybe?
I don't know what's going on.
You see that every now and then. Like, look at the FSF doubling down on supporting He Who Shall Not Be Named.
Right. If you need to go to the IRC channel to get support for an open source thing, go to the Libera whatever and not the Freenode.
I would argue, because actually it's a lead into my news a little bit, but I would argue that the culture of go to the IRC to get support is a big part of why a lot of people don't use open source software.
Well, it's usually you're going there not just to get, run of the mill support. You're going there for like the deep support, right? You're right.
But even then, like, I have a lot of engineers who basically the IRC is one of those things that like really old people talk about sometimes.
Yeah, you go there because like you're involved in developing the project, right? And you need something like you need to actually have a conversation that you can't even do on like the pull request comments or anything. You really need to.
And it's interesting because on one hand, I feel like most newer projects and things that aren't tied to old open source culture would probably just make a Discord, but.
Well, usually you can get almost everything these days. You can just handle with your GitHub issues and those sorts of things. You don't really need the chat room basically, but the chat room is more for the developers themselves, right? Because like at my work, we need a chat room amongst us developers, right? Our GitHub issues aren't enough for, or Jira isn't enough, right? Whatever.
True. Like the Jira is add this thing or do this thing, but you got to decide like what's the architecture, what kind of APIs.
Basically, the actual developers need to have a chat room for themselves, and then it's just open. If you really need to go, you can actually talk to them, right? That's what it is. It's not for the everyday get help,
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I don't know how much impact this news would even have. Like, how many people think about this at all? Would even notice?
There's a lot of people on Freenode.
Yeah, but how many?
The open source, a large amount of the open source community is on there. So,
let's see. Freenode has, according to Wikipedia, has an average of like 80,000 users globally.
That's about right, yeah.
All right, that rounds down to basically 0.
Okay, but you could have said 800,000 or 8 million. You would have been like, it rounds down to 0.
No, if it was 800,000 or 8 million, I would have been a very different average number of servers, 32. Okay.
Anyway.
Oh, wow. The Wikipedia already got updated. In May 2021, Freenode underwent what staff described as a hostile takeover. 30 staff resigned.
Yep.
Only a handful of those staff are involved in the Libera Chat project. Looks like everyone else just bailed completely.
Yeah, they're just like, fuck this.
Yeah, we'll see how that all goes. So, Audacity is basically the most used open source audio editing and recording software.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be able to just talk and record your talking, the software that's available to you for $0 free legally, there aren't a lot of great choices. Like I guess if if you got like your iPhone, there's like the audio recording app. On Windows, I think there's some kind of recording app, right? I guess GarageBand isn't really great for talking; it's more for music focused, right? I guess you could talk into it, but not the greatest, right? And you go beyond that, it's like what we're using costs money. Adobe Audition, right?
Or Cool Edit, which I pirated, then I pirated a different way, and I got a legit license long after that software was gone.
Right, and so despite the fact that the user interface looking like it's ancient Garbo, Audacity is that program. It's totally free. It runs. It works. You can plug a microphone into a computer, push the record button, and talk.
Yep.
And it will record your voice and save it, and make an MP3 and do everything. And so it's what a lot of people use, and they don't need anything more than that. So it's it's a long running, popular.
In the old days, we actually used it to record Geek Nights. We didn't edit or master Geek Nights in it because it really doesn't. It's GIMP levels of quality for all that stuff. But for the recording, we'd record in Audacity, and then I ran a script in a bunch of open source crap that I won't even mention because you shouldn't use it because it's garbage. But that's what we used to use.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's really old. It's been around a long time. It's improved a lot over the years, but it's still
improved.
It's not in some ways it's improved, and in some ways it's still the same old Garbo.
Yep. But one of the two problems I guess I've always had with Audacity is that even when I first tried it, on one hand, it definitely does not at any point have anyone who's even sniffed the concept of UX and their life involved in it.
Nope, none whatsoever.
To the point, but two, it's informed very heavily by the kinds of things that the loudest and most vocal users of Audacity try to do, which are often weird things that if they knew anything about audio, they would not be doing in the first place. Mm-hmm. So you end up with an interface that very prominently centers features that people shouldn't be touching regularly and hides or doesn't even have the things that someone who actually knows audio would literally want to do every time they open the application. Like it's
not meant for pros, right? It's meant for just the average person who wants to record, their voice and do a little bit of cut and paste and some of those other things that, aren't so easy to do in the sound recording app on your iPhone, right?
Yep.
It's something between that and Audition, right? And they don't need any of those other features Audition has that makes it worth paying for.
Yep.
So anyway, Audition got acquired also.
Audition was Cool Edit. Adobe bought it and then actually made it way better eventually. Like Audition.
Oh yeah, right. No, but no, I'm saying not Audition. What's the one where
Audacity?
Audacity. They all both start with odd. Right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to mention Ardor.
Right. Well, Audacity got acquired by some sort of group of some kind, and they don't seem to be bad like the people who took over Freenode are bad.
Yep.
And there are people now who are being paid full-time employees to work on Audacity to improve it. Right. So they're actually going to work on its user interface and its other things. You're going to see probably in the coming time period, years, who knows, Audacity get better, faster than it has.
Yep, I would hope so. Because the GIMP never got better. But Audacity, I think, is way more broadly used than the GIMP is. But I digress. So Audacity, looks like they tried to add some telemetry data collection to Audacity that you could opt in or out of to collect, what do people do? What do people click on? What are they trying to do? When does it crash?
You see this a lot in almost all your apps. Send us anonymous usage data, checkbox, yes, no. And what that is it just records you in maybe small or large ways with some amount of detail, like what you use the app for, what features you use, what you don't use, but crash reports, all these sorts of things. And usually most apps that have this have it on by default and you have to turn it off, right?
Yep.
So, and if you have, you might think it doesn't matter, but actually that kind of matters a lot, especially for less popular apps. That data they get really will inform the decisions they make during development. If you turn it off for your Apple apps or something, it's You know, okay, in some small way that might matter for your privacy or who knows, but they have so many people who have it on that your data is just, lost in the sea. Right?
Yep.
You're
And that's the kind of data that can tell them, like, hey, this button that's prominently featured actually is not used by anyone, or it's used by this one jerk.
You notice a pattern. This crash keeps happening, and all the people who have that crash have this exact GPU. Then we need to get one of those GPUs to test with, because clearly there's some, right, something going on.
Now, what's fascinating is, as best I can tell, the developers had planned to ship Audacity with the telemetry in it, but disabled by default, so you could opt into it.
Yes, they're being a good. Whoever is the new caretaker seems to be doing good. They're like, listen, it's off by default. Just only turn it on if you want to, right? To help us make Audacity better. It's really anonymous,
The user base of Audacity flipped the fuck out about this to the point.
The hardcore vocal user base of Audacity that was like involved in,
Yep. The ones I mentioned earlier who do weird, bad things with Audacity.
The ones who are in the IRC and in the forums or whatever kind of Slacks or channels that they have, right?
Like, I'm pretty sure these are the same because
most of the Audacity users are people just making podcasts who are not involved in the Audacity community.
Yep. Right? But remember how I mentioned those are like the loudest users? These are the same people who get mad that Audacity has the ability to update itself. Like the kind of person who wants to install an old version of an application and keep using it forever. Like it's a weird subset of the usage of Audacity, and I don't know for sure, but I strongly suspect those people are a big part of why Audacity still has a really bad UX. But anyway, those people flipped out to the point that Audacity now will not include any telemetry, opt-in or otherwise, just nothing. They're just getting rid of this whole idea.
All right, so the people who took over are trying to be such do-gooders and trying to ingratiate themselves with the community so much that they bowed and will not make Audacity as better as they could.
Yeah, but it looks like those people were also mad about the auto updater, so Audacity will also now let you disable checking for updates and downloading new versions.
Okay, go right ahead if you want to disable new versions.
Yeah,
I guess.
It's just like desktop open source software never really has a good design. Like this is a topic we try for another day, but like the projects tend to only take feedback from people who will also write patches and contribute code. So they tend
not even that. It's just you don't even have to write patches or contribute code. You just have to be active in the community of the thing.
Yep.
Right?
But
most of the users are not in the community of the software.
Well, that's it. Like, I use a web browser. I'm not in the Chrome community. I'm not like every day just chatting with other people.
Most of the Chrome, sometimes you have a piece of software where, especially something like, that's a developer tool, right? And most of the people in the community are developers who are using that tool. It's like a library or something. But something like Chrome, almost all the users of Chrome are not in the Chrome community. They just download, install, and use Chrome to browse the web, right? So they have to consider, and they do. That's why they have telemetry, so that they can consider what the actual users are doing with Chrome, right? And Audacity, it's like seems to be, not learning that, understanding that like 99.99% of your users have not commented. Right? Yep. You're allowing 0.001% of the users, the ones who care so much about Audacity that they hang out in the Audacity community, to run the show and impact the 99.99% of Audacity users who simply go to the Audacity website, download, install it, and never interact with any of the community whatsoever.
Yep. And I guess that's the broader point, is that I feel like a lot of desktop open source software, especially if it's in the free open source software subset, like the people who also have ideological reasons for being involved, tend to greatly amplify a very small number of voices from a very narrow perspective in just all the decisions they make.
Well, if you're in the 99.99% of the GeekNights community that just listens and never comments or forums or does anything, you're letting the 0.01% of the, people who are weirdos who come and talk to us, mess with our minds and influence what kind of GeekNight sausage is made. So get on in here.
So in some other news, it's a minor thing. Well, it's a small thing. It's a minor news. There's not a lot to say about it, but it's a good thing. Spotify is adding a bunch of accessibility improvements on their iOS and Android apps around podcasts, but the one in particular that I want to highlight is automatic podcast transcription, which is a moderately big deal because, one, it's hard to do. Two, most podcasts are amateurs who don't make money, and if they actually even if they want to do transcriptions, they can't afford it. Like, look at us. When we were poor and doing Geek Nights 4 nights a week.
Money. We could afford it once in a while, but I guess if we did way less podcasts, we could afford all the episodes.
But we were doing 4 hours of content a week for many years.
To do our archive would be prohibitive, right?
Yep. It was a little bit prohibitive. I was paying for Spanish subtitle translations for some of our panels a while back and professional transcriptions. And it ended up adding up to a lot of money, and it covered
it's hard time-consuming work that someone deserves to be paid for.
Yeah.
Right? And it's one thing to say, yeah, if you're a big company, a TV network, you have no excuse. You better fucking translate that shit to every language known to humanity.
But if you're just like a hobbyist, not even making money off your thing.
It's like you want to make it accessible, but making it accessible is not accessible to someone who has no money.
Yep.
Right?
That's part of why we started live streaming the podcast on YouTube. It's not just because there's 20-ish people who watch it on a regular basis, but also because it does make a pretty good transcription that is there for anyone who needs that. But the fact that this is going to be embedded into the apps for podcasts specifically, kind of a big deal. It really will open up the accessibility of podcasts to people who are hearing disabled in some way.
Yeah. What I don't like, though, and you see this with Apple launching their subscription podcast today, right, on iTunes or whatever, or the podcast app, I guess, I don't know, whatever, is that the podcasts used to be, and they still mostly are technically on the bottom level, this open thing, right? It's just someone's putting out this publicly accessible text file, available on the internet via HTTP within RSS format or Atom format that lists where all the MP3 URLs in a big list, right, with the names of the episodes next to each MP3 URL. And then you can write software or by hand, subscribe and keep an eye on that file and get all the new episodes. And, when we're available on all the platforms. But
yeah, you can take our raw feed and just put it into any software that'll parse it. It'll just work.
We will always have that raw feed available for you, right? But other people, their podcasts, especially they sign up with some, they don't make a website for themselves. They just sign up with a podcast hosting site, and they're on Spotify or not all these, they're getting onto these closed places, and now you maybe can't get the podcast so easily the old-fashioned way.
Yep, especially because there's always this ebb and flow in podcasting in particular of trying to make money versus trying to expand audience. And it's not like most people are like Geek Nights, where even if we didn't make any money at all, we could just afford to run this because it's fun to make. But this cycle right now is moving back into everyone's trying to monetize podcasts heavily.
Yeah, I'm not liking the closed podcast ecosystem is all I'm saying.
Yep. Well, it's interesting because streaming, like video game streamers and Twitch streamers in particular, versus podcasters, are starting to diverge in their strategies for monetization. I don't think either one is going to work out in the long run, but I'm at least glad to see that there's some diversity in how they're doing it, because as much as I don't like closed ecosystems, I much prefer someone pays a content creator dollars to get content. Rather than all these other we'll set up a complicated system of redistributing money from advertising sales and aggregate and all these indirect methods.
What about people have no money though, and then now they can't. People have no money, can't get any content.
Yep, but people who have no money could never get content until relatively recently, when we started making free content by monetizing those people via advertising.
50 years since someone pirated a cassette tape.
But I'm saying all of broadcast TV only existed because the people watching were the actual product, and that just created over time an increasingly toxic ecosystem. Really, we just need some form of communism, but I digress. Anyway, at least these subtitles would be pretty cool. All right, let's see. Galaxy upcycling, right.
Okay, so long ago, you can see the story on iFixit to get all the details, but long ago, Samsung Galaxy unveiled this plan to do this upcycling program. The idea would be that hey, you got these old Samsung Galaxy phones. We know you bought a new phone, right? That old phone isn't really good enough to be your phone anymore because you can afford a new one. There's a newer version of Android. That one's running an old version. You don't want to use it as your phone anymore. We get you, right? but maybe the screen's broken, but that is still a useful electronic device. Somebody could use it if they could only run any software they wanted on it instead of the phone software. That is like a full computer, basically.
Okay, I mean, I was just cleaning out a bunch of my closet space. I have 4 perfectly functional old Android phones.
Yeah. That's still a perfectly functioning computer, right? And even though it might not be able to be good enough to be used as like your phone because you live in New York and you have a lot of money, it could be used as a lot of things, right? It could be the computer in some other device, who knows what, right? So the idea was that they were going to be like, hey, give us back all these old phones, and we'll find companies that like have product ideas, and those companies will just use old phones and the boards, chips, batteries, screens, whatever parts from those old phones in brand new devices, right? And that'll be that's way better than fucking recycling or pretty much anything, right? It's like that's like the absolute best thing you can do in terms of environmental niceness when it comes to semiconductors, right? Is like just find a new use for it. You bought a brand new gaming computer. Well, take your old gaming computer, which isn't good enough to run games anymore, and we'll use it as a computer in a dentist office.
Yeah.
Right?
Like look at how many people, like there was a lot to take an old laptop. That's an HTPC. It's great.
Yeah. It's like, just keep finding a way to make use of it. Right. So, the thing is that because Samsung basically said, and they stopped talking about it.
Yeah, it kind of just like petered out to nothing and just disappeared.
Yeah, and iFixit, every time they try to talk to them about it, they just eventually stopped responding, right? And it's like, oh, what happened? Well, basically what happened is that, like for-profit companies do, they decided it wouldn't be worth it or wouldn't make enough money to be worth it, and they didn't do it, and it's it seems to have disappeared or is surfaced in only the most bare minimal way that is not sufficient, right? And it's kind of sad because it's like, I think they're wrong. I think it would make them a bunch of money, and because what would happen is the idea is that they just need to release a thing, some sort of app or something that would allow anyone to, with an old enough phone, right, sort of just remove the OS and unlock it to allow anything to be installed on it, right? Probably someone would just install Linux on it, I imagine.
Because otherwise, if you want to just reuse an old Android phone, you probably have some like old, unupdatable, insecure version of Android.
And Android does have Linux kernel, so you just need to have the right drivers in that kernel, and you're good to go. You can run any software on it now, then use its peripherals as long as if you have drivers for the different parts of it, you're good to go. That's not too much work from Samsung, I imagine, right? It's not too much maintenance, but apparently they think they wouldn't make enough money to pay for even that small token effort. But actually, I think they're dead wrong. If you did that, suddenly there would be a hot market for those old phones, whether they were used or new, right? Maybe ones they couldn't sell, right? It's like you had your overstock, right?
I mean, think, it's not just a computer. It's a computer with an embedded touchscreen, embedded battery, and between 1 and 3 cameras.
Yep. And then, not only that, but people, I think, would be more likely, especially if they were, cool, to buy that phone knowing that when it was done with its life, that it would then be able to be unlocked at some point in the future when they upgraded to a new phone, that the old one would be useful as a generic computing device and wouldn't just sit in a drawer as an emergency backup like my old iPhone is, right? I don't know if it would get me to switch, but if I had to suddenly buy a phone now and wasn't already an iPhone person, if that existed, that would really make me...
Yeah.
Right?
Also, I wish it was like I have so many old Android phones just lying around, and I always had this idea of, why don't I leave them in the house to be like, just, I don't know, even a conversation piece or like a web browser for anyone who happens to be over. Because back then, not everyone we knew even had a smartphone or a smartphone that was good. Use them as remote controls, set them up as security cameras. Like I had all these cool ideas, but it was just too much.
All sorts of things you could do with one.
It's just too much of a pain in the ass. Like I booted one of the old ones up to see what was on it. It's proprietary, locked down, and also doesn't really work anymore because it's so old.
Yep, exactly. So it's just really disappointing story that Samsung didn't go through with it. I'm in favor of a law forcing them to do it. The end.
Yeah. Put a little meta marker there.
And Apple also.
Yeah. But anyway, things of the day. So, I like me a mashup, and YouTube has also figured out that I like a mashup, but it also knows that I like very particular kinds of mashups. And it's starting to recommend to me relatively obscure ones that are great. So I submit to you a very well-made Eminem Lose Yourself, but it's Mr. Blue Sky by Electric Light Orchestra. It is surprisingly well done, and I legitimately like this as a song.
There's a lot of those on YouTube. People, DJs, they find two songs that are far apart from each other, but have the same BPM or close to it, and they just go to town, right?
Yeah, but there's this unquantifiable aspect. I'm trying to think more about this now that I'm seeing a pattern of which ones of those I like and which ones I just find just like tiresome to listen to. And there's a very delicate line, and I'm trying to articulate exactly what it is that makes one of these good for me. I have not figured that out yet. Neil Cicerega tapped it straight to my soul, and this is one of the few I found that also triggers that impulse in me.
You got to be in the right mouth mood.
Yeah,
right,
this is my mouth felt this one. I lost myself. Mom's spaghetti. Anyway.
So it's let's go back in time, right? It's 1980 something, and you want to make an NES game, right? So now today it's really easy to make an NES game. You get your emulator, right? You just get your compiler. There's all sorts of. There's even tools to like that. Like there's like NES Maker kind of things out there. There's a Game Boy one actually on itch.io you can get. I forget what it's called. But you can just make games really easily, and you push file save, and it makes a ROM. You load it in your emulator, and you play it. Or you put it on your flash card. You put it in your device. You play it. Super easy to develop, relatively speaking, games for old consoles. What if you want to do it in the year 1980 something? It's a lot harder, right?
Yeah.
Even if you have like the NES dev kit. What, you think the NES dev kit was easy to use in 1980 something?
Yeah, you know what a big step was in the NES quote dev kit of that day? Drawing your pixel art on graph paper and then using specialized tools to input that data into a computer.
You didn't have fucking Visual Studio Code, right, in 1980 something. So how the fuck did you do it? Well, one way you could have done it was the way this person does it in this video. They've got an Apple IIe, and they set that shit up. It's not even as good as my Apple II GS, Apple IIe.
Yeah.
And they found a card on eBay that is an EEPROM writer. So what they can do is they can write a program on the Apple II, which sucks ass to do, and then compile it, assemble it, and burn it to an EEPROM. And then they put the EEPROM over. They got a separate device that was from back in the day that lets them copy the EEPROMs, right? And they got physical chips. So you put the chip in the card in the Apple II, you burn it, right? You take it out, you put it in the other thing, you copy it, and you put the chips into this NES cartridge that has two holes to put chips into, and you slap that into an NES, and now you can play the game. In the video, he goes through the whole process of making an NES game the way you would might have had to make it in 1980 something if you had an Apple computer, or pretty much any computer. Like, what computer would you have then that was better than that? Right? It's like that's the best computer you could have had in those days, right? What are you gonna have? So programming was a pain in the ass then. There's a reason we don't do it that way anymore.
It's funny. There's a video just made the rounds. Captain D is back, and he did a long dive into how they made Flight of the Navigator.
I did see the link to that. I didn't watch it.
It's 45 minutes long. It's way in depth and way good.
Okay. Well.
But I am glad that we live in an era where creator tools are much more accessible and easier to use.
Yeah, it's like how to make Flight of the Navigator using Adobe Premiere and After Effects. Oh, it will take you like a day.
Yep. Like, imagine trying to make something like a podcast or a radio show in the 70s compared to now. You forget even like syndication, just recording it and editing it. Old audio editing sucked. Tapes sucked. I hated tapes. I never want to see a tape again in my life.
You have to cut film with a scissor.
Yeah. All right. In the meta moment, we're still mostly stuck at home, but there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. We're out doing stuff every now and then, bit by bit.
The book club book is still Genji Monogatari.
I'm reading it a little bit.
The first novel ever written by human beings, right? The author of Murasaki Shikibu. I read like 3 chapters yesterday, so we're moving along.
Yep, I think in June we're gonna do an episode on it.
There's like 50-something chapters in total, I think, right? So that's a significant portion.
Yeah, I think July is the latest we will do an episode on it.
Yeah, so just in case anyone, is over the past year for some reason has decided you're finally going to go for it, right? We're reading like the unabridged translation. I forget who's the person that translated it, so you know it's the right one.
I'm looking to see. You didn't actually say in the posting. I was hoping it was there.
But yeah,
and of course, we have to read the best possible unabridged translation. And then you didn't say what that translation was. And there's a tiny image that is not big enough for me to read. Wait, I can click on purchase the book. Tale of Genji, Penguin Classics Deluxe Edition. Royale Tyler is the translator.
That's the one. The Royale Tyler translation is like, I did research when we chose this. That's like the one, right?
Oh yeah, there's a quote here. The world's first novel in a translation that is, quote, likely to be the definitive edition.
Yes, that's, I'd say, accurate. So,
all right. So yeah, June to July, around then, we'll do the show on it. So you can start reading it now, and you'll probably finish it around when we finish it. My only advice to you, I've said this before, don't stress about it like it's like middle school or high school and try to like get every nuance of what's going on. Just read it for entertainment. And if you're not 100% sure like exactly what happened, just keep powering and it usually becomes pretty clear later and you don't have to sweat it that much.
I think one thing that people might not realize is that, even if you were to get the original text of this book, right? Even modern Japanese people couldn't read it because it's like written in ancient Japanese, right? So so it would be like if you tried to read Old English, right? It's like you can't.
Old English is not like I went to ye old pub. It's like this German sounding nightmare.
Right, and it's like it's not the same. So, and it wasn't even translated into modern Japanese until like way later. And it wasn't translated into English that we can understand until even later than that.
Yep.
So, and that's why it's got its, quirks, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Otherwise, follow us in all the places. Stay tuned for what will likely be between 1 and 3 PAX Online panels. And we'll see if any conventions happen toward the end of this year or not. We're just kind of waiting to see how things go. I think the con that has the best chance, not saying like this is certain or anything, the con that has the best chance of us being at it in person that is soonest is probably PAX Unplugged in November.
Yeah, it's like PAX West seems like it has a non-zero chance of happening.
But it's getting too close to when it would happen to plan it.
Would I go to it? Right?
Or could it be planned quickly enough? Like there's a long lead time to get the game industry to show up to something.
If it did happen, would I like to go to it? If it was safe, sure, right? But can we make it happen?
Yep. There's a lot of things that could get in the way of it that are not like it might be that COVID, it could be pretty safe to go by September, but that it was too late to know it would be safe in time to plan it. That's the kind of thing we can't control right now.
Too expensive, right? Or who knows?
Yep. So we'll see. My main rule is I'm not going to any con that requires masks or social distancing because if they require those things, it's still not safe.
Exactly.
If they don't require those things, that does not necessarily mean it is safe. It's got to also be safe.
Right.
Looking at you, Anime Con, I'm not going to name that happened like 2 months ago.
It has to be so safe that reasonable, intelligent, good people have to be like, you know what? It's as safe as it was in 2018. We don't need to, worry about this, pandemic, right?
Yeah,
we can just have our convention like we used to. It can't be, it's the pandemic's still going on, but, fuck masks. It's like, no.
Yep. So we'll see. Right. And maybe we'll record some stuff. At some point, Scott and I can be together in the same room, which makes it a lot easier.
That seems like it will be safer sooner.
Yeah, like we're going to edge into outdoor meetings of friends and then like figure out what to do from there. Like we're going to take it slow. And I advise you, not that we are experts, to just take it slow. Like step by step. Don't just dive into licking door handles again. Save that for 2022.
This is another one.
I think the earliest PAX you should lick doorknobs again is PAX Unplugged, maybe.
Who knows?
All right. So video cameras. We're not going to talk about all.
Somehow we haven't done a show on any sort of camera, anything. I searched. If anyone sees that we have and Rim deleted them or something, let me know. But I searched our archive. I didn't find any photo or video episodes, which seems really wrong. We feel like we've definitely done some.
But we're going to focus just on video cameras, primarily post-film. Not like we don't want to talk about Super 8 camcorders. Like, those are cool, but one, that's a different show, and two...
Right, I mean, back in the day, there were film cameras. You had a big roll of film.
Yep.
You spun it through really fast, exposed, and there would be a little spinner. So it was in perfect synchronization with the frames going through, and it would expose, frames at some rate, usually 24 times a second. The light would come through the hole, hit the film. You'd take a lot of pictures real fast, and then you needed to develop it, and then you needed a projector to watch it, right?
Yep. But there were basically two main types of video recording, or not even recording in many cases, devices. You either recorded on film, and then you had to project it to play it back into anything, or you had a digital or analog modern electronic video camera. I'm choosing a lot of vague words because there is a variety of technology that was involved in this. But the key thing to know, early video cameras could not record. They could only capture and immediately broadcast somewhere.
Yeah, people don't think about this too much, right? But it's like, you look at, say, old movies, right? They go like a movie from the 50s, right? What's a movie from the 50s? What, Seven Samurai or something, right? Alfred Hitchcock, something like that. And then look at TV from the 50s. It's complete garbage, basically, right? And it's why is the TV from the 50s garbage? The TV from the 50s wasn't on fucking film, right?
Yep.
It didn't, develop the television program on film and then play it back. That's not how it was done. They had a TV camera, right? An enormous monstrosity, right? That basically was kind of like a radio, but for vision, right?
Yep.
The same way, it was like, instead of having a microphone that then would go to an antenna and broadcast radio signals, the television camera in those days would basically see, I'm not explaining in detail how it works, but, and then broadcast radio signals live, right, of whatever it was seeing, and your antenna would pick it up, and you watched it live on television the same way you listen to radio live.
Like, early television didn't have the concept of reruns. It was a one-time broadcast, and it's gone.
Yeah. And if there was a recording, right, the recording would be similar to recording the radio, right? There's an analog signal going out the antenna. To play back the TV program, you need to play back that same analog radio signal. You could record it to a magnetic analog tape, right? Like, a big reel-to-reel magnetic tape is what you could record it to.
But that tape was storing analog signals.
Yeah, it wasn't storing, like film, actual images, right? It was storing, just an analog recording, and then you could play it back to broadcast again.
Yep. Meaning it was limited to whatever standard. And NTSC came way later than some of that early stuff.
Yeah. So, those early video cameras were,
Yep. And to really drive this home,
film was the king of quality for probably even to very close to.
That's why some TV shows, like some old TV shows, even things from like the 90s, look great if you get a remastered version because they were actually originally recorded on film, so they could just rescan that film to a higher quality modern digital format.
You watch some fucking Snow White, it's like, yeah, it was on film.
Yep.
Right?
But then you had some shows that were recorded with TV cameras, meaning NTSC is literally the best quality signal you ever got. There's no master film anywhere. There's nothing.
Right. And that was true up until maybe you're watching like in the 80s or 90s.
No, Star Trek Voyager, there was no film there. That's why Voyager looks like shit compared to TNG that was recorded earlier.
Yeah. It's like Voyager was not filmed on film like it was a movie. It was a TV program, right? It was recorded to tapes, right? Better than VHS tapes, but still just tapes.
Yep. So yeah, we got past all that. And what we really want to focus on is the era of not really camcorders, but video cameras that were accessible to people, even if it was just professionals who are not only at mega studios and news broadcasts, like the super big iron studio stuff. Because that could be a whole show on its own that we're also not that versed in, because it's all archaic, dead technology.
Fun note, though, you can go like on eBay and other places and buy old studio TV equipment.
Yeah.
Digital era, and some of it is useless, but some of it, like this lenses, like a lens not from an old TV camera, it's like, hey,
yeah,
nothing wrong with that, right? You can slap that on something newer, right?
I mean, that old VHS camcorder I had, like, of course, it had a shit sensor and it had a lot of problems, but it had a really good lens in it.
Yeah, it's like, some of that old stuff has all been thrown out and is going for cheap because people don't need it anymore. They've got newer, better stuff.
Yeah. But like one last point to really
necessarily bad.
To really drive home like how much all this changed. A lot of old TV, if there's indoor scenes on a set, they were recorded using a TV camera, like video camera. And if they were outdoors or on location, they used film because the NTSC or TV cameras were too big and hardwired to be brought anywhere.
Yeah, depending on the year, right? Eventually you had the sort of like news broadcast truck stuff, right? Where, you got the van with the dish on the roof. They still have those, but obviously they're much different now.
Also, that's a mostly just digital pipeline.
Right, but you used to have a 80s, 90s, even 70s. They have the camera that is like big ass thing they put over their shoulder, right? You got the camera guy with the person with the microphone doing the news report on the street.
Yep. Nowadays, most people use a running. Actually, the camcorder I got is one of the most popular ones for like local news run and gun.
Yeah.
So, in terms of like people having digital video cameras outside of those professional settings, like digital ones that recorded to a file of some kind, those are actually pretty new. And ones that were good are scarily new. Like they're a recent thing. During the run of Geek Nights, there were not good digital cameras that were affordable for normal people. For video.
Yeah, you had the ones that recorded to VHS or Betamax, right? Or all kinds of different tapes, like the little tape that goes inside the big tape. Right? And those are basically just shittier versions of the TV ones, right? That they would use. And then the first ones, video cameras that were digital, it's like, I don't even know what the first consumer one was, but like they would record and these crappy codecs like what was it called? Like AVC or whatever, right?
AVC HD, is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, because the encoding chips that would translate the raw signal from the digital camera sensor, right, to a video file, they had to be able to do it fast enough, right, at whatever frame rate there was.
And it's not like nowadays, like you would stream on OBS. Look at how many resources encoding live video uses, even today.
Right. So you have some device that has to be small enough, and someone's holding it. It's a camera. It's got a sensor, right? It's got a lens. It's got all this focusing, all this stuff going on, and it's got a battery, and it needs to be able to take all the video data that's coming in off the sensor, right, without overheating the sensor or anything, and write to a file, right, the frame, the full, however resolution it is, 24 times a second, 30 times a second, right? And then if it fails, you don't want the file to or if it runs out of battery, you don't want the file to be broken, right? You need that, the person wants all the video that they recorded, right? It would be upsetting if like you recorded until the battery died and then your file you recorded actually nothing. So yeah, there were file formats that were like, basically highly compressed, very lossy.
Yep. There was this early era. You could buy these cameras that were like, record at 720p 60. Like, yeah, cool. But each individual frame, like what that video looked like, I think the industry term for what it looked like was dog shit.
Yeah, it would throw away a lot of the color data.
It's like early MP3s, like those 64 kbps MP3s you listen to. It was like that for video.
Right. It's like we had higher quality video files. Your computer could play them back. Right, because playing back is actually less CPU intensive than recording, but it's like we could even encode them, no problem. But you have to be able to encode them in real time. If you're recording at 30 frames a second, you need to write to the hard drive all 30 frames, right, within a second, or you start buffering.
Yep.
Right? You start piling up. It's like, okay, well, there's more frames coming in that we're holding in RAM that we haven't written to the hard drive yet. And if that RAM fills up, well, now you can't record anything. You have
also, RAM eats power, and cameras are usually portable and not plugged into anything. So the more buffer space you have, the less battery you have, and the less you could even record in the first place.
So there were all kinds of cameras for quite a while that could record video digitally that consumers could buy, but the quality was really low, even if that same camera could like record really great photos, you know, and a high resolution sensor or something.
And it was this confluence of
storage. The storage wasn't fast enough. The encoder wasn't fast enough. The power wasn't high enough. The quality was bad.
Yep. I think we did a show on codecs back in like 2006. We'll see how what that was like, because that's actually the era when the camera I'm about to talk about came out. But in those days, like, so many things have changed. But if you had to boil it down, one, batteries got more powerful. Like, battery technology got better.
Lithium-ion batteries became way better.
Yep. Two, portable general purpose computing got better. It wasn't that dedicated chips got better to do this for most purposes. It was that general purpose chips became power like economical enough, and also economical enough to embed in these devices to be able to use more generic formats.
Think that when you buy a digital camera, you're not thinking about the CPU in a digital camera, because they don't really advertise what CPU is in there.
Yep.
But guess what? There's CPUs in there. There's video encoding chips in there, right? And they're way more powerful on the newer cameras than they are on the older ones, and it matters a lot.
Yep. And then you also had the problem of codecs. The way you encode video have evolved a lot since then. Like, early codecs had huge problems with editability. There used to be this big problem, we ran into it, where even if you had a fancy digital camera that could record video, good fucking luck doing anything other than playing that video back. Try to import it into video editing software. Not that there was even that much worthwhile video editing software for consumers in the year of our Lord 2006, but usually wouldn't even work. Like, if you took we had a flip camera. I spent a lot of money on this thing for Geek Nights. This thing was handheld. It could record a couple hours of 720p video. It was one of the earlier adopters of H.264 and AAC audio, like MP4 file formats. And the video it outputted was so... trying to think how to describe this without getting too jargony. It would slew so much, and the timing was so off. Like, it encoded badly. It made a barely formed, probably actually incorrect file. And if you try to import that file into video editing software, you get a ton of artifacts and frame drops and ugly broken frames. Sometimes things would just crash on you. Like, video was not very interoperable back then.
Nope. So yeah, and the other thing is the storage, right? So video takes up a lot of space. You're taking 24, 30 photos a second, even if you're compressing them and they're low resolution.
Yep.
That's going to fill up your storage real fast. So, nowadays you can get 128, 256, who knows, and even the Ultra Pro storage on pro video cameras these days, they're just slapping SSDs right into the video camera directly, right? But back in the day, what do you have? A compact flash card, few megabytes on an SD card, right? It's not like today where an SD card holds a crap ton, right?
Yeah.
Several gigabytes. And SD cards then were slow. So even if it could hold all the video, you had to be able to write 24 to 30 frames per second to it. Otherwise, again, buffering. You're filling up your RAM with frames that haven't yet been written to the SD card. The SD card, whatever your storage is, needs to be fast enough that you can slam the frames onto it as fast as they're coming in from the thing. So,
and before you say, just use an SSD, those didn't exist in a consumer form. Like, my first SSD was 16 gigabytes, and I paid like $400 for it.
Yeah.
And I was glad to pay such a cheap price for an SSD.
So I remember the Sony camcorder we bought in the late 2000s had like it had like a laptop hard drive.
A spinning magnetic disc was just in it.
It had a 2.5-inch laptop hard drive. You couldn't take it out or anything, but like that was you could tell that was what was in there.
Yep. Right? You could even feel it spin up when you started recording. It
might have been 64 or 128 gigs. I don't remember exactly how big. Maybe only 32.
The camcorder that actually I gave the main Geek Nights camcorder that we've recorded most of our panels with which was one generation better than the camera you're describing. I think it had a 32 gigabyte laptop drive. I gave it to the cold guy.
This camera wasn't HD. It was just SD, 3:2 aspect ratio, right? TV aspect ratio.
But even worse, you want to get video off of that thing? All right. One, it's going to be highly compressed because it can't record raw.
Yeah, you plugged it in with a USB cable to a computer.
USB 2, and you waited. It took a while to get a file off of that thing.
It did have an SD slot. I don't remember. I know you could definitely take still photos to the SD.
Yep.
I don't remember if you could record video to it.
The one I had, one generation newer than yours, could record to the SD slots. But back then, you were lucky to have like a 1 gigabyte SD card.
Yeah, and this was only, less than 20 years ago, right? And even then, DSLRs at the time, just still photo digital cameras, right? They didn't have SD cards. They had compact flash cards in those days.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. Partly because back then, compact flash was faster for writing.
Yeah, but compact flash wasn't going to hold up for video.
Nope.
I don't think I've ever seen a video. There might be one, but I've never seen a video camera that took compact flash.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to all the cameras I've owned. But so the era we live in now is so great for video. You have so many options.
Your phone is amazing.
Yeah.
Right? It's
I don't think you understand how hard it was to record a GeekNights panel in the year 2008 and how much shit we went through to have those early videos up. That was a nightmare. Nowadays, we both have two 4K cameras on our phones in our pockets. I have a pile of cameras I'm not even using.
I have a GoPro 5. I think the current GoPro is 9 or something.
Let's see. I got it right in front of me. It doesn't say. It's a GoPro 8.
Is the GoPro 8. So they're at least on 8, right? My GoPro 5 can do 4K 60, right?
Yep. I think this one can do 4K 120.
There is a GoPro 9 now.
What? That must have just come out because I just bought. No, I didn't just buy the 8. But COVID fucked up my sense of time. Never mind.
It's a GoPro 9 now. But yeah, my GoPro 5 can do 4K 60. So there's 4 newer GoPros. It's gotten 4 increments better. So yeah, we're at the point where it's the old cameras have, digital video cameras for consumers have gotten way better in a short amount of time, but it's still a long enough amount of time. You can buy something 5, 6, 7 years old, just not 10, 15 years old. And it will be amazing and cheap. And the new stuff will just fucking blow your mind if you can afford it. Right.
So where are we now? There's four, I'd say there's 4 rough ways to go, depending on what kind of video you want to get. One way is, seriously, just use your phone. It's probably fine.
90% of people, the phone camera is better than it's the phone camera is going to be better than anything unless you spend a ton of money and learn a lot about video.
Yep.
So why bother? Unless you're super serious, don't bother. Just use your phone.
Yep. The second
famous on TikTok with just your phone. You don't need anything else.
The second sort of thread are the hyper-portable, durable GoPro and GoPro adjacent type cameras, which are used for a variety of purposes.
Mostly those are used. They're not that much. GoPro isn't that much better than a phone, honestly. The advantage of the GoPro is really that it's, you won't want to strap your phone to the front of your bicycle or bring it in the ocean or put it on the front of your snowboard or whatever else, surfing, which is what a GoPros were originally made for, right? Because you'll fucking break it.
Yep. But also, my GoPro can just take SD cards. My phone really can't. Well, my phone can actually, but that's because I have a weird phone. Most phones don't take.
I have a dongle. That's how iPhones do.
Yeah, you're not gonna have a dongle plugged into it while it's strapped to your chest.
No, you record to it and then you transfer to the SD card afterwards. Is how it works.
Yeah, what if I want to record one long video? But anyway, if you're doing a lot of people are doing,
pay for a phone with more space inside.
Yeah, it won't be enough.
The iPhones come with a terabyte. You can get big ones.
Yeah, I could fill it. Anyway, the GoPro type cameras, a big use of them is people who want to live stream or make a mini studio of some kind in an apartment or a house. You can just buy 3 or 4 of those things and use them as a big multi-camera setup. They're pretty fucking good. Not that expensive, really easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
The third and fourth way to go, really, it's form factor. DSLRs, photo cameras, tend to be fantastic video cameras because they tend to have way bigger and better sensors than a lot of even professional video cameras have.
Yeah. So people don't realize this, right? So the first digital camera, right, or DSLR basically, that was also a video camera, was like the Nikon D90, I guess, something like D something, and it came out like 2008, right? So now it just seems like normal that you're using like a digital photo camera to make video. It's a dual purpose thing, but that is not that old development, only 13 years old, right?
Yeah. Well, like my DX1 cannot output video on its HDMI port.
And that original Nikon, I think it could only do like 720p 30 and didn't do a great job of it. So since then, now, of course, you can get 4K, sometimes even more than that, right? And because a digital still camera, that's right, the DSLRs with the, lenses and everything, or now they don't have mirrors, now they're just, digital lens mirrorless cameras, right? Like the one I have. They're meant for still photos primarily. The sensors are big, right? Usually a video camera, the sensor is tiny, like a 1-inch sensor or smaller.
Yep. That giant fancy camcorder you probably saw when I was tweeting about a thing we were working on the other day, that sensor is tiny compared to the sensor in even like my Lumix GX1.
Right, your phone sensor is even smaller than that, right? And look what the phone sensor can do. But when you get a bigger sensor, right, it's like having bigger film. The quality goes up. You can get a shallower depth of field is really one of the big advantages. You can open your lens up really big and sort of get that separation, that blurry bokeh background that the photo people are all excited about, right? That your iPhone just fakes it.
Yep, a lot of people are starting to fake that. Even with fancy cameras, sometimes it's easier to get a deeper depth of field and then just do whatever effect you wanted in post. But
sure, why not? But yeah, bigger sensor means higher quality mostly. Right?
Better low light performance.
Oh, low light performance is huge, right? It's like, you take photo in the dark. If your sensor's big enough, right, you can capture more photons with it. You're capturing more photons with a bigger net, right?
Yep.
You get a tiny sensor, you can't get that many photons with it. It's too small. How many of the photons in the room are hitting it, right? Less. If you had a big sheet of paper, how many photons in the room are hitting it? Way more. But the thing is the fact that those can now record video, right? They have powerful enough CPUs and fast enough storage in them that they can now record video from that big sensor. The quality is just like, wow, right? Unbelievable. The problem is that because of the form factor, right? They're still primarily were designed originally for stills photos.
Yep. So like they're not comfortable to hold if you're doing doing camera work, like video work. They also don't have things like XLR inputs. They don't have you can add them with all these accessories, but then you get one of these monsters with a million things plugged into it. Yep. They lack all these features, but they have an amazing camera. So if you just plug you just record video with it, or just plug an HDMI cable into it and plug that into your capture device, that'll be a better camera than even most professional camcorders you might look at, and you already own it.
Yeah, I mean, people these days, what they tend to do is get all these accessories and attach like handles and rigs and cages and all sorts of things to their mirrorless or camera to sort of make it good for videoing. Right?
Yep.
And yeah, it's amazing if you do that, right? And you also get the side benefit of you have an amazing stills camera that you can change the lenses on, and it's like the best camera you've ever had. You're good.
Yep, and especially if you were doing something where you're like sticking the camera on a tripod and not touching it, or like mounting it on the wall and pointing it at something.
It doesn't matter that it's
not. Like all those things a camcorder does are not going to help you. You're just wasting money, or you're getting a worse sensor and not using any of those features.
Yep. And, like I said, phones are so good these days. There's no reason to buy a standalone camera unless it's significantly better than a phone and you know how to use it so well that you're going to be able to make it better than your phone, right?
Now, camcorders are in this weird space because if you go to the camcorder route instead of a DSLR, there is a place, like a really good place for the point and shoot equivalent, because those things are pretty cheap, like a few $100. They tend to have pretty good sensors, and they will record video very easily and very accessibly, and you don't have to know that much. And you also don't have to worry about things like a lot of phones, if you try to record video for too long, can start to overheat. They're not really designed to record video for hours on end in a way that these camcorders are.
Nowadays they are the newest, like newer iPhones. Like you can make movies with them. They even show you in the ads people making real movies with iPhones. I've seen movies made with iPhones. You know, they're totally legit. You know, the only thing you really miss out on using an iPhone is like lenses, and even then, people have like tiny ones they stick on the front. They actually kind of work.
Yeah, but like a $300 like HD camcorder is really, really, really easy to use, and we'll get some pretty great footage.
I think the only advantage of that really is I don't think that's better than an iPhone these days. But however, it's cheaper than an iPhone, right? An iPhone is $800.
Yep.
Right. So that's the play. That's why that still exists, is because, you know, okay, yeah, your phone can be better if you buy a new phone.
Yep.
It's a
but there's one other thing that these all have: significant optical zoom.
Yeah, that's also true.
Like phones are doing mostly 99% of the time all digital zoom, unless you're nuts. That does not get into the nuts part. But
you're not taking sports photos with your iPhone because you need the big zoom, right? You're not taking wildlife photos with the iPhone unless you can get really close to the wildlife because you don't have the big zoom. Sometimes you need the big zoom, and the phones don't have that.
And then the full-on camcorders, like what I use, they mostly are built to be very rugged, very durable, and they have like a lot of convenience features for the kind of workflow of, oh shit, I gotta get a video of that right now, or I gotta record something strange. Like there's like little things like I can hit a button and pick what neutral density filter I want, and it'll just do it. It's all built in. It has
my little street camera can do that.
Yeah, a lot of things, a lot of video cameras can't do that.
Yeah, no, but yeah, you're right. The big professional camcorders, their purpose they have is their sensors usually aren't as good as the
sensor on mine's pretty small.
Yeah, they come with a lens that's usually a really pretty good lens with a wide zoom range, right? So you don't have to worry about switching lenses, but then again, you can't switch lenses.
Yep.
But the advantage they have is all these other things they have built in are things you would have to accessorize and intentionally swap in and out on, you know, if you were doing the sort of, you know, DSLR route, right? If you had some Sony, you know, A7, whatever, and you would have to apply so many accessories to that thing
that it turns into a giant camera that's less durable and like safe to use.
Yeah.
Like you're more likely to bump it into something and snap a piece off.
Right. So features, for example, that a big, you know, semi-pro or pro camcorder would have that, you know, you would have to accessorize would be something like a network cable. You can just plug them right into the Ethernet
direct RTMP streaming. Just in it.
It just streams just on its own. If you want to add streaming to, like, you know, if I want to add streaming to my Panasonic GH5, you can't do that. The Wi-Fi isn't strong that it has is not strong enough to stream. You have to plug the HDMI output into a capture card of some kind and then get that into a network cable somehow.
Things like redundant recording, like stick 4 SD cards into it and it'll record the same video in one codec to 2 of them and in a lower resolution to the other 2, like that kind of nonsense. Relay recording.
Record 2 SD cards at once. I can't record 2 different codecs at once.
I can do 2 different codecs on mine. What I've often done is one SD card is getting full, like the maximum whatever, and the other one is getting like a 1080p 30 basically mixed down that I could edit on my phone or a tablet if I wanted to pretty quickly.
Yep. You know, multiple microphone inputs, right? It's like my, you know, a little GH5 guy. He's got one microphone input, and you can get this accessory to add 2 XLR inputs. Yep. Some of those camcorders, it's like they got room for several XLR inputs. You can get your shotgun mic on the top. You can get the microphone that like the news reporter is going to hold in their hand. You get all those hooked up directly to the camera. No accessories necessary. It's got like a full mixer on there for all of them.
Yep.
You know?
You can even redirect the output. Like you can do clever stuff. In fact, one thing I've often done is had just a shotgun mic on, pointed it at 2 different audio inputs on the camera and recorded one with a high gain and one with a low gain in case I run into clipping. Like all these little like quality of life features that you probably don't need unless you're doing certain kinds of professional video, but make it really easy to pick up the camera and deal with whatever shot you're trying to get right the fuck now.
It's just like, you know, it's like just it's an integration of all the like the most common accessories into one device, right?
Yep.
But then they're sacrificing some of the camera bits, but it's like you're doing video. It's like, what, camera bits do
Yep.
you need?
Like, here's the compromise. I have a Leica Dicomar 20x optical zoom lens in this thing. It's a pretty good lens. I can do a wide angle. I can do macro. There's a lot of elements in there, and optical stabilization I can turn on or turn off. But it also only has a 1-inch sensor.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, if you think historically speaking, right, even with film, right, when you're taking a still photo, people are going to look at that one image for a long time, right? Or you're going to use that, you're going to print that image out, right? Like on a poster or a billboard or something big maybe, right? Or at least a magazine. And, you really just need the quality of that one image to be unbelievable, which is why back in the day, still photos, they would use like, sheet film. You take like a 5-inch, photo, right? For some landscape or something, right? On just one giant piece of film, right? As big as a whole piece of paper, just enormous, right? Or, nowadays medium format is considered big,
Yeah.
but you think about it, it's called medium format. There's a large format too. It's enormous. But even back in the day, it's like on film, right? Old days, it was the 35 millimeter film, right? Spinning real fast. There wasn't enough light to record on a giant piece of film. Imagine giant, large format film going through fast. Even 70 millimeter is ridiculous for a movie. And I think it's the biggest you're ever going to see, right? It's like, so even though you have a camera that is, a stills format shaped camera, it's got this big sensor. If I record 4K video on my Panasonic GH5, it doesn't use the whole sensor. It's using a 4K shaped piece of the sensor, and the rest, a lot of the sensors being ignored. Because for video, you don't need as much. You're only looking at each image for a smaller amount of time. And guess what? That smaller image is still 4K. It's still unbelievable. That's how unbelievable the quality. It's not about the video being low quality. It's about the stills being high quality.
Yeah, it's what do you optimize for? Like a camcorder can get away with a lens that has a different performance profile because it needs to be more versatile, but it doesn't need to be necessarily as high quality as what you would use in a still camera for like a zoom shot. Yep. I just need a lens that goes from like 24 millimeter to 480.
Yeah. So what the pros are using these days, from what I can see, is basically there's these video cameras, like the best possible ones, like the Reds and the RE ones and all this stuff. And basically what they are is just sensor in a box. Right? It's like if you ever watch like slow-mo guys or whatever, the slow-mo cameras, it looks a lot like that. It's just a box, and on one end of the box is a sensor and a hole to attach whatever freaking lens you can find. Some ridiculous cinema lens, some, anthropomorphic lens, any kind of lens you can
I think you mean anamorphic.
Anamorphic, yeah. Or anthropomorphic, you don't know. Both kinds. Right? Whatever, you're filming, who knows? Right? It's just some lens mount with a big sensor and basically a computer, and everything else is outputs. You attach the storage separately. You attach the monitor separately, right? It doesn't even have a screen on it. Everything attaches separately. It's just a sensor in a box. You power it up. You attach everything else to it. You put it on a crane. You put it on a dolly, whatever you're doing at your, film, TV studio, whatever. And that's how they're doing. And that's, for a studio, that's very practical, right? It's like it's its own piece. If it breaks, we don't have to replace everything else, we can get a bunch of them, right? We can attach whatever we need to them to suit our needs specifically. We're not locked into any choices here. We have the money, we can afford it, right? But for a normal person, that's completely impractical, right? It's like you have to go and buy like the whole universe, right? Around to surround this box. That's just a sensor and a hole.
And that is why I own a camcorder specifically, like a professional one, is because the kind of video I make most often is I just want it to work. It's going to be a possibly interesting situation this camera's in, and I want to just hit a bunch of buttons and make it work as quick as possible with the minimum effort, minimum stress, minimum risk of damaging anything.
So final recommendation, almost every single person should just use their phone. Like 99.9% of people use your phone. If you're not a professional at photo or video, even if you bought something expensive, you probably wouldn't be able to do better than you can do with your phone. So if you have the knowledge and the money and it's a hobby, or you're into it, you're a YouTuber for real or something, you're a Twitch streamer for real, you're big into it, you're actually doing it. You're not just thinking about doing it. You're actually already doing it frequently, right? You've proven that this is a thing. It's for real for you now. It's now your deal. It's worth spending money onto you, right? The question is, are you into stills photos or not, right? If you're into stills photos, go buy some mirrorless camera and whatever lenses. And guess what? It's also the best video camera. You don't need to buy anything.
Or honestly, if you record a lot of video, then don't get a DSLR, don't even get a still camera. Use your phone for still cameras. And if you're recording a lot of video for some reason, get one of those really small, like, hand cameras, like hand camcorders, like a Panasonic or a Sony. They're not that expensive. They'll do everything you want. They'll look great.
Than a phone,
yeah.
Right? You're going to save so much money, right? If you're not doing the stills photos, it's like you're saving your phone isn't good enough. Maybe you got an old phone or you can't afford the newest phone. That, you can get a 4K, one of those, right? Or GoPro. It's like, that might be better than the phone you have. I don't know what phone you have, and it'll be cheaper for sure. Right. Yeah. And then if you are just like a video only person, but you are deep in the video zone and the video you are doing is more of the TV style video, right? The TV style video, then you can go for the sort of prosumer camcorder, right? But if you're doing more of the movie video, right, where you're sort of setting up your shots, taking your time, then you want to go back to the sort of mirrorless, area, right? Because you can change out the lenses, you can get higher quality, right? You can, put cine lenses on there, anamorphic lenses on there.
Because like my camcorder, unless there's something wrong with the shot, I'm using a lot of its automation because I'm trying to capture the events more so than trying to set a mood.
We're using it for recording a GeekNights panel. If you needed to make a movie, like we had a screenplay and we had scenes.
Yeah, I would not use my HCX1 for that.
Camcorder is not helping with that, right?
So that type of camcorder, there are better versions of that with bigger sensors that are used for film. Like if you need someone to run along with the camera and all that, but those are pretty specialized equipment. They cost a lot more than the camcorder I'm talking about.
Making a movie, you really need to switch lenses out, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing still photos, you need to switch lenses. If you the general all-purpose lens is really just for I'm recording events, right? That are not, visually. It's not about the camera angle or the lighting or the scene, right? It's here's a recording of our panel or, some documentary, reporting type, just here's what's happening stuff, nothing artistic in nature about the filming itself. The events that you might be recording might have value, but it's not like your choices as the camera operator that are adding the artistic value to the video recording.
We went on a little long. I think we can end pretty much there, but this overlaps heavily with something we talked about on the last Thursday episode of Geek Nights around that, like the momentum to get started to do a thing and like trying to overproduce it or overplan it makes it less likely you'll do it in the first place. That's probably the most important thing. What do you want to, why are you trying to get some video? And then think about how much are you willing to deal with before you can actually make the video?
Yeah, do as much as you can with just whatever you have, right? You got a phone? Okay, go and you want to do a video? Do as much of it as you can with your phone. And if you can get it done, why are you buying anything else, right?
Yeah.
Just try to get it done. And if you only buy something new, if you're saying, look, I'm trying to do this thing. I've been trying to do it with my phone. I researched how to do it with the phone. I tried to figure it out. And what I found is that, I can't, I wanted to zoom in. I wanted to take a photo of birds and I can't do that with my phone. It's like, well, because you need a big zoom lens to do that. Their birds are flying. They're going fast.
Remember those videos we used to do of walk around the expo hall at a con? Do you know how much of a pain in the ass those were to record without a camcorder?
You can do that just with a phone nowadays.
Even we need 2 XLR inputs into that phone.
I guess that would be the problem. But
so I would wear a Marantz on me, like on my waist. Scott would wear another Marantz. And then we had the camera and we deal with it in post.
Yeah, until you find something that you cannot do with what you have, don't buy anything new. But that's the state of what's available if you do end up in that situation with your video recording needs.
And I think that was a solid show.
Okay.